Welcome back, everybody. So in the last episode, I was able to finish off all the filler and putty work, and in today's episode, we're going to finally pick up a spray gun and do some priming. Let's get to it. Alright guys, so it's Tuesday night now. We're done our filler work finally, so done all that sanding, so now we're going to do a little bit more sanding. So I'm going to back sand my edges. So more or less just this area where all these sanding scratches are into my base coat. I'm going to sand that with 320. Normally I do 220 and then 320. However, I didn't buy 220 simply for the sake of cost on this job. So I'm just going to go over 320. It might take me a little bit longer. And then normally I would do my full blend prep. So in this case, it'll just be a gray scotch on the rest of the panel. Normally I would do that at this point. However, for the sake of time, I want to get this primed tonight. And it's not crucial as long as I'm scuffed up to where I'm going to be spraying, then I'm good. So we won't be doing that tonight. We'll just do our back sand, maybe sand a little bit further. And then we're going to just sand and scuff down in this area because I'll probably bring my primer down to just sort of around this edge somewhere in that range. So we'll hit that with a red scotch pad in the areas that it's tough to get sandpaper in. So we'll pop these guys out, do that. And then we're going to hit our bumper ends with some 180 grit. That'll give us plenty of adhesion for our primer. To start off, I just take some 320 by hand and get into some of the nooks and crannies here. And then I throw some 320 onto my DA and just go over our edges, do our little back sanding there, get rid of the aggressive scratches from blocking. And then I'm just going to take some red scotch and just go around all the edges where we might potentially get some overspray with our primer. We don't necessarily need to get too crazy here, but give it a nice tooth for our primer to stick to. And lastly, we'll just take some gray scotch into our blend area for our paint. We don't want to get any primer up here, but there's potential for overspray, so we do want to give something to stick to. So we've got everything prepped in the quarter here. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be hard lining my tape off of this seam sealer line going around here. And actually that's not a seam sealer line, there's some seam sealer there, but that's actually just a where one of the panels lines up there. This is a good time to really make a good game plan for when we're actually going to be painting as well. So as you can see up top here, I'm just going to be rolling off this top edge for our primer. However, there's a good line back here that I can hard line off of for when we actually go do our paint. Because you never want to have a hard line in your paint on like the surface of a panel. Like even like around here, you don't want that. It's not ideal. That's something we're going to have to be really careful around with the quarter glass since we're not going to be taking that out. Again, not a huge fan of doing that, but it is what it is. So even when we're behind a panel, like behind a bumper or something like that, you can just hardline wherever, but it looks a lot better and more professional if you actually just go off of the edge of a panel, edge of a seam sealer line, something like that. And another quick thing to touch on while I'm staring at myself in the camera here, as you can see, everything here is nice and dull. There's no, up to about here anyway, there's no gloss in those panels at all. You can catch a little bit of reflection up there, but that's just the angle when you actually hit it straight on. There's no reflection there, and that's what we want. Now, the reason I just hit that with a gray scotch, I'm going to get into that more when we get into the full prep work here after I prime. However, on a lot of panels, you would just be sanding that with like 600 or 800 grit, depending on the blend prep for your paint. So we'll go ahead and prep our bumper ends, and then we'll start masking. And before we continue on here, I'm going to touch on a huge question I see all the time online. It's what grit do I prep to? And that is solved by the TDS for your product, the technical data sheet. Now, my handy dandy Proform primer here that we're going to be using actually has this all listed right on the can. This often doesn't happen on professional products, like the Sikkens will be spraying. There's nothing listed. Everything's on their website, however. And it can all be found online. Just search like the name of your product and TDS, technical data sheet, and you should be able to find all this info. So as we can see here, it gives you how to prep everything, clean plastic surface with this, clean plastic metal and pre-painted parts with this, yada, yada, yada. Our mixing ratio, which is 4:1. And then if you wanted to go medium build, you can buy a reducer for this as well. We are not going to do that because, yeah, we're not going to. Completely sand surface with 180 to 220 grit paper. So that's what we want to do. A lot of products will have different grit specifications for different substrates. Like I used to spray Sikkens, and from what I recall anyway, I could be off on this, but bare metal prep was 40 to 80 grit, I believe. And then a soft substrate like paint or primer, for the same product to spray over it was like 220 to 320 or something like that. So like just because a sandpaper is going to put a deeper scratch into a soft substrate than it will on a metal substrate. So yeah, look up the TDS. Every product is different. That's why you can never get a straight answer from someone when you ask them online, what do I prep to? Well, they don't know what product you're spraying, so they can't answer that question. So yeah, follow the TDS. While we're still talking about this is great because it says everything an online TDS would have. So we'll be spraying with an HVLP gun with a 1.8 millimeter tip, and we will spray at 10 psi. That'll be nice because it'll keep the overspray low in the garage here. We won't have to mask everything off. 2 to 3 coats, 15 minutes flash time. So that means 15 minutes between coats. So you spray your first coat, wait 15, second coat, wait 15, then you can do your third coat. Film thickness, flash times, and temperatures will affect the drying time. This is important. If it's a little bit chillier in your garage, you might have to wait a little bit longer than that 15 minutes. You might have to wait 20 minutes between coats. You can kind of judge with a high build primer like this because it sprays on glossy and then it will dull off as it flashes. So you can kind of tell that way. And then maximum film thickness of this product should not exceed 25 mils wet. 25 mils is 25 thousandths of an inch. Kind of hard to measure, but that can be important. Recoating. So you can recoat after 30 minutes or upon cool down after forced drying at 60 Celsius for 20 minutes. After 8 hours of drying, the primer's got to be sanded before you can do anything. So that means after 30 minutes and before 8 hours, you can just spray over. After that, you need to sand it again before putting another coat. So we've got our driver's side bumper end all prepped up, ready to go here. I haven't prepped the ends quite yet, but that's fine for now. Again, time crunch, want to get this primed tonight, it's already getting late. So this is the opposite side. I don't think I showed this one quite yet, but it's got some deep gouges here. So we're just going to be fixing those up as well. And this one I'm going to try to keep small. I'm going to try to keep it down low. Do my best to keep our base coat away from these top edges here, although that's cozy, especially on a tri-stage like that. That's real cozy in there. That shouldn't be an issue, keeping color away from up there, but along this edge here, we might have some color up there. But again, I'm spraying the Sickens base coat because I know it's almost a bang-on match every time I've sprayed it. So yeah, we'll get this guy prepped up and then we'll do some masking. So we got everything prepped as far as we need to go in order to prime it. Our bumper ends, got our other one there over there on the wall. So I'm gonna get everything masked up here. I'm not gonna get super detailed in the masking. I might do another video on that if there's enough interest down the road. However, I'll just give you guys a little montage, a little time lapse. Let's get to it. as you can see, I went a little ham with the masking, but everything's covered up. I figured better safe than sorry, even though we're only spraying at 10 PSI and there's not gonna be a lot of overspray. Airflow can be really unpredictable in a garage when there is no airflow, if that makes any sense. So long story short, like if I start spraying down here, we might get some like whirlwinds or vortexes going back sort of this way and over. Like normally I just mask off with 36-inch paper around a repair like this. So just run like 36 paper around everything, and that's more than fine in like a downflow booth, or if you're loading crossflow booth correctly and like you're not going to get overspray blowing over everything, that's fine. However, garage, no airflow. I'm not running any fans for this. I will be running fans when we paint, but I won't be for this. So then I just got our parts over in this corner here, and again, just masked off my walls. Just nothing too fancy. I don't have everything masked off, but just everything sort of in the immediate area. So I'm going to be throwing on my mask here. I've got fresh filters on my charcoal mask. I'll be wearing safety glasses to keep any overspray, or as much overspray as possible, off my eyes and face. And yeah, so we'll mix up at a 4:1 ratio, and let's get some primer on here. Oh, and one last thing, I did wipe these down, all the bare plastic areas, with an adhesion promoter. So when I have an area like this in plastic where there's like paint and primer, well, a factory primer around it, I prefer to just use a wipe for our adhesion promoter, because I have had adverse reactions with spraying it on. I've had it like try to bubble paint and aftermarket primer and stuff like that. So for areas like this, I prefer to just literally wipe it on. That way I can just keep my wipe exactly on the plastic areas. All right, guys, let's spray some primer. And with our primer mixed up and filtered, put in the gun and ready to spray, we're gonna go ahead here. I'm gonna hit all my edges first, not the main visible sections of the panel. This just lets me get primer on all those areas without worrying about getting overspray onto the main panel afterwards. Any overspray will be covered up. You can hear my compressor already kicked on there. That's why using little compressors, I'm using a 20-gallon unit here, is not ideal for Autobody. Okay, so right here I'm running into a different issue. As you can see, my spray pattern got really small there, and hardly any product was going on. So I'll do another pass here, and it's like just like a super narrow little stream coming out, which isn't ideal. And the gun isn't set to that. The gun is set to fan. What I realized afterwards is that I had a clogged vent on the top of the gun. So right here you'll see I do a little in the moment fix, and I just pull the cap right off, and that does solve all the issues for me. Isn't ideal because you can get dust and stuff falling in there, but for primer, not the end of the world. And as you can see, my spray pattern's nice and full there. And I'm bringing my primer just right to the edge of my repair, not going past, barely going into the areas that I back sanded there, just right to the edge of my feather edging there. So with that done, we'll get a coat onto the parts, and then we'll get 2 more coats over everything. The gun I'm using for all my priming work here is a cheap HVLP from Princess Auto. I think I bought it on sale for $40 or $50 Canadian, and that comes with the regulator as well. So really good deal for doing your primer work. I wouldn't recommend buying anything fancy if you're just a DIY guy who's doing it occasionally. I even use this one in a professional setting. Again, for primer, it's all getting blocked off anyway, so if your spray pattern isn't perfect, it's not the end of the world. I would not recommend one of these for the actual spraying, but for priming, it does the trick. I'll try to put a link in the description for you guys of either this one or something similar on Amazon. With our primer done, I'm gonna call it quits there for today's video. A couple things I didn't mention in the video I realized as I was going through with the editing is that I didn't show you guys my spray setup for what I have, like for the compressor and air lines and all that jazz. So I'm gonna get into that in not the next video, but the following video. So the next video, we're gonna do all of our prep work and blocking. It'll be a shorter video. And then in the following video, I'm gonna do a real short video just going through my garage showing you how I have it set up for spraying. And then our final video, well, maybe not final video, but our next video after that will be the actual spraying of the paint. So thank you guys very much for joining me today. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot them down below in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.